There is a silent epidemic spreading across the modern world, and it is a phenomenon that society absolutely refuses to acknowledge. If you attempt to bring it up in polite conversation, you are immediately labelled bitter. If you write about it online, you are flagged for toxicity. If you try to have a rational, data-driven conversation about it in the mainstream media, you are shut down, marginalised, and told that you, as a man, are the inherent problem. But if you look around, if you really open your eyes and observe the men in your life, your brothers, your friends, your colleagues, you will see it everywhere. Millions of men, successful, intelligent, capable, hard-working men, are quietly packing up their emotional baggage, cashing in their chips, and walking away from the dating market entirely. They are not protesting in the streets, they are not holding up signs, they are not screaming on internet forums, they are simply leaving. And the brutal truth that society refuses to say out loud is that they are completely justified in doing so. We have reached a cultural tipping point where the juice is simply no longer worth the squeeze. For decades, men have been sold a specific narrative. We have been told that we need to work harder, earn more, be more emotionally available, be more sensitive but also remain stoic, be traditional providers but also act as progressive allies. Men have been sprinting on a treadmill where the speed keeps increasing, but the finish line keeps being moved further and further away by a society that constantly shifts its expectations. And finally, a massive percentage of the male population has stopped running, stepped off the machine, caught their breath, and realised that they do not actually have to play this rigged game. To truly understand why men are done with women, we have to look at this situation not through the chaotic lens of emotion, but through the cold, unforgiving, and deeply rational lens of economics, evolutionary psychology, and risk assessment. Men are, by their biological nature, highly logical and analytical creatures. We are wired to assess risk, calculate the return on our investment, and solve complex problems. When a rational man looks at the modern landscape of dating, marriage, and family building today, his internal risk assessment alarms are deafening. Imagine for a moment that a financial advisor comes to you with an investment opportunity. He sits you down and tells you that to buy into this venture, you must commit a massive portion of your current wealth, pledge half of your future earnings, dedicate all of your emotional bandwidth, and surrender your legal sovereignty. He then looks you dead in the eye and informs you that this investment has a 50 to 60% chance of failing completely. If it does fail, the government will step in, strip you of your physical assets, potentially remove you from your own home, severely limit access to your own children, and force you to pay massive dividends for years to the very entity that broke the contract. Furthermore, he adds, even if the investment doesn't fail, your daily return on this massive commitment will likely consist of constant criticism, a severe lack of appreciation, and a lingering feeling that you are never quite enough. Would you sign that contract? Would any sane, rational human being make that deal? Of course not. Yet, this is the exact legal and social contract that modern marriage and long-term relationships offer to the average man today. The family courts and the societal narratives are so overwhelmingly skewed against men that committing to a modern woman has become the highest risk, lowest reward venture a man can possibly undertake in his lifetime. But let us step back from the legal catastrophe of marriage and examine basic day-to-day dating. The dating market has been entirely decimated by the illusion of infinite choice, an illusion primarily manufactured by dating algorithms and social media platforms. Throughout the vast majority of human history, a woman's dating pool consisted of the men in her immediate vicinity, her village, her church, her university, or her extended social circle. Today, an exceptionally average woman with a smartphone has direct, unfiltered access to thousands of men, including the top 1% of men who will happily use her for a casual, meaningless Tuesday night encounter. Because a millionaire, a highly successful entrepreneur, or a male model swiped right on her during a moment of boredom, the internal algorithm for her own self-worth shatters. She suddenly, and quite genuinely, believes that this top-tier man is her baseline. She believes that because she can capture his temporary physical attention, she inherently deserves his permanent emotional and financial commitment. This dynamic creates an astronomical level of widespread delusion. You have women who work entry-level retail jobs, who carry massive credit card debt, who have deep unresolved psychological trauma, and who possess absolutely zero domestic or interpersonal skills, yet they look at the world and demand a man who makes six figures, stands over 6 feet tall, owns premium real estate, and funds a luxury lifestyle they could never dream of affording themselves. Women have, effectively, priced themselves entirely out of the dating market. They have confused their inherent worth as a human being with their competitive marketplace value. And when average, hard-working, loyal men approach them, men who would make excellent, dedicated husbands and fathers, these men are looked at with absolute disgust. They are treated like peasants who have dared to speak to royalty. So, what do these men do? They experience rejection after brutal rejection, not because they are flawed, not because they are toxic, but because they do not meet an impossible, mathematically absurd standard created by Instagram influencers and TikTok dating coaches. Men watch women treat modern dating like a free dining app. They see women showing up to expensive restaurants with zero intention of actually getting to know the man sitting across from them, spending the entire evening scrolling through their phones, taking photos of the food, and then ghosting him the very next morning. Men see this happen to their friends. Men talk to each other. We observe, we analyze, and the collective realization has been profound and irreversible. Why are we spending our hard-earned money, our precious time, and our emotional energy to be treated like unpaid entertainers for ungrateful strangers? This brings us to the poison in the water supply of our modern culture, the complete and utter lack of respect for masculinity. We live in an era where masculinity is inherently framed as toxic, dangerous, and oppressive. From the classroom to the corporate boardroom, from Hollywood movies to social media algorithms, men are constantly told that their natural instincts to protect, provide, and conquer are fundamentally wrong. Yet, look at what happens when the bill comes due. Society demands traditional male performance while completely and totally rejecting traditional male authority or respect. Modern women desperately want the independent, empowered, boss girl lifestyle, but they absolutely demand the traditional male provider to subsidize it. They want a man to be fiercely traditional when there is a flat tire in the rain, when there is a strange and violent noise downstairs at 3 a.m, when the mortgage payment is due, and when the heavy lifting needs to be done. But the second that same man asks for traditional respect, loyalty, or just a moment of peace in his own home, he is immediately branded as a controlling, insecure misogynist. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot publicly despise traditional men and then privately demand traditional provision. This intense hypocrisy has birthed the modern concept of the bare minimum. You will see this phrase plastered everywhere online. A man works 50 to 60 hours a week to provide a safe, warm home. He fixes the cars, he manages the yard work, he stays completely loyal to his partner, and he doesn't abuse drugs or alcohol. In any sane, functional era of human history, this man was a pillar of the community. He was considered a catch, a highly valuable husband to be deeply respected and cherished. Today, women post viral videos rolling their eyes, drinking wine and saying, "He pays the bills and doesn't cheat? Congratulations, that's just the bare minimum. Nothing a man does is ever enough. If he works too hard to provide the lifestyle she demands, he is labelled emotionally unavailable and distant. If he cuts back on his hours at work to be more present and emotionally available, he's suddenly lacking ambition and is no longer a high-value provider. If he is agreeable, calm and peaceful, he is boring, weak and lacks an edge. If he is assertive, decisive, and takes the lead, he is toxic, overbearing and patriarchal. It is a psychological trap. It is a meticulously designed game where the man is always in a state of owing, always apologizing, always striving to meet a goalpost that is mounted on wheels and constantly accelerating away from him. When a man finally realizes that the game is entirely rigged from the start, the most empowering, logical thing he can do is put down the controller. And that is exactly what millions of men are doing. Let us delve into the brutal evolutionary psychology of this dynamic and the absolute lack of self-awareness regarding the biological clock. Time is the one currency in this universe that you cannot earn more of, and it is entirely unforgiving. I see it constantly in society and in the data. Women in their early 20s, at the absolute peak of their youth, beauty and fertility, riding the endless carousel of dating apps. They are partying, finding themselves, travelling, and ruthlessly rejecting good, solid men. They loudly proclaim to the world that they do not need a man, that they are focusing entirely on their careers, and that men are simply distractions or headaches. Then, 29 hits, 30 hits, 33 hits, and suddenly the cultural tone shifts violently. The social media posts go from, "I don't need anyone," to videos of them crying in their cars asking, "Where have all the good men gone? Why is modern dating so incredibly hard? Why won't anyone commit to me?" Here is the brutal truth that nobody has the courage to say out loud. The good men didn't go anywhere. You just swiped left on them 5, 7, 10 years ago because they were only 5'10", because they drove a used Honda, or because they didn't have a six-pack. You friend-zoned them because they were spending their weekends studying, working extra shifts and building their careers instead of taking you to VIP clubs and buying you expensive drinks. And now, those exact same men are 35 years old. They have their money, they own their houses, they have built their confidence, and they have complete control over their lives. And you know what they absolutely do not want? They do not want a 35-year-old woman who spent her prime years treating men like disposable garbage. They do not want a partner who comes to the table with a massive list of demands, deep-seated resentment, a jaded outlook on love, a staggering body count, and a rapidly declining ability to start a healthy family. Why would a successful, established, rational man in his 30s sign up for a depreciating asset with a terrible attitude when he has the power and status to date a 25-year-old who is feminine, cooperative, genuinely admires him, and brings absolute peace to his life? This is not about men wanting to control women. It is not about male insecurity, no matter how many sociology professors claim it is. It is pure, unadulterated market dynamics. Men and women value fundamentally different things, and society has lied to women about what men actually want. Men value peace, youth, beauty, cooperation, and deep loyalty. Women value resources, status, utility, and dominance. A woman's corporate success, her law degree, her MBA, and her corner office mean absolutely nothing to a man's attraction to her. In fact, if she brings that stressful, combative, masculine corporate energy into the living room, it actively makes her a worse partner. Men deal with stress, brutal competition, and warfare out in the real world all day long. The absolute last thing a man wants is to come home after a grueling 12-hour day and have to negotiate a peace treaty in his own kitchen with a woman who views him as a competitor rather than a partner. If you ask any honest man what he truly desires in a relationship, the answer is so incredibly simple that it genuinely infuriates modern women. We want peace. That is it. We want a sanctuary. We want a woman who smiles when we walk through the front door. A woman who is fiercely loyal, who takes reasonable care of her physical health, and who does not manufacture endless drama because she is addicted to the emotional roller coasters she sees on reality television. But finding a modern woman who actually brings peace to a man's life is like trying to find clean drinking water in the middle of a toxic ocean. And so, we arrive at the current state of affairs. The great male opt-out. People look at single men and, driven by societal conditioning, they automatically assume these men must be miserable. Society desperately loves to frame the single man as a lonely, depressed, socially awkward basement dweller who simply couldn't get a date. But that is a massive projection, designed to protect the fragile ego of a failing dating culture. The reality is far more terrifying for the societal status quo. Men are finding profound, deep, and unshakable happiness in their solitude. Once a man detoxes from the desperate biological need for female validation, a need that society drills into his skull from the moment he's born, he experiences a level of freedom that is absolutely intoxicating. He wakes up and realizes that his money belongs entirely to him. If he wants to buy a motorcycle, he buys it. If he wants to invest his savings into cryptocurrency or a high-risk business venture, he does it. If he wants to travel to a foreign country tomorrow, he books the ticket without asking for permission or managing someone else's anxiety. His time is finally his own. If he wants to spend his entire Saturday building a deck, playing video games with his childhood friends, or reading Marcus Aurelius in complete and utter silence, he can. There is no one nagging him. There is no one passively aggressively comparing him to the husband of her co-worker. There is no one secretly resenting him for not reading her mind. Because women have made relationships so incredibly difficult, high risk and unrewarding, men have simply adapted. We have built incredibly strong support systems with other men. Brotherhood is quietly returning to the modern world. Men are pouring their vast reserves of energy into their physical health, hitting the gym with incredible discipline, building their careers, and pursuing their deepest passions. They have taken the massive amount of time, money, and emotional labor they used to pour into ungrateful women and redirected it entirely into themselves. And the return on that investment has been staggering. We have learned to adapt to the cold. We realized the house of modern dating was burning down, so we calmly walked outside into the woods and built our own cabins. Yes, it is quieter out here, but it is safe, it is secure, and above all else, it is peaceful. The traditional shaming tactics that society has relied on for decades simply no longer work. You can call a man an incel. He will just shrug his shoulders, check his growing investment portfolio, and go to the gym. You can call him a misogynist for having basic standards. He will laugh and continue planning his next solo vacation. You can tell him he isn't a real man because he refuses to marry a single mother with massive debt. He will look at the miserable, financially ruined, legally devastated divorced men in his life and realize that being a real man in modern society is just a manipulative synonym for being a useful idiot. The spell has been completely broken. The grand illusion has shattered into a million pieces. What we are witnessing right now is a fundamental seismic shift in human history. For the first time ever, a massive demographic of men has realized that they hold the power of walking away. They have the economic, technological, and emotional independence to survive and thrive completely alone. There is no easy fix for this. You cannot legislate desire. You cannot pass a law that forces men to find modern, masculine, argumentative women attractive or worthy of lifelong commitment. The dating market will remain fundamentally broken until the pain of staying the same becomes significantly greater than the pain of changing. For the women sitting in their empty apartments drinking wine and wondering where all the good men have gone, I offer you this final, brutal truth. We are right here. We are succeeding. We are thriving. We are building wealth, and we are happier than we have ever been. We just stopped looking at you as the prize. Through years of observation and painful experience, we finally realized that we are the prize. Our ability to provide, our instinct to protect, our unwavering commitment, and our fierce loyalty are highly valuable, scarce assets, and we absolutely refuse to hand those precious assets over to a culture that actively hates us, disrespects us, and treats us as highly disposable utilities. Until society remembers how to value men, how to respect traditional masculinity, and how to bring genuine peace and cooperative partnership back to the table, the silent exodus will only accelerate. Men will keep walking away. They will keep choosing their own peace, and they will leave an entire generation of delusional, demanding women completely alone with their impossible standards, their Excel spreadsheets, and the harsh, unforgiving reality of time. The game is over. Men have simply chosen to turn off the console, and the silence that follows is beautiful.